Hi everyone, I'm Alicia Dhanjal, your career counselor and study abroad mentor. And here I am with my fifth live episode of Know About Your Dream Career. And our today's topic is medicine. Medicine is one of the most sought after and rewarding career for those interested in science. Over the years, the field of medical studies have undergone various stages of development. It has become so vast that specializations within are increasing day by day. And how can we forget in the COVID times, doctors are next to God. A recent study by KPMG, a professional service company, shows that in India there are only 6 doctors for every 10,000 people. This is remarkably a very low number, and the country needs well-educated and energetic healthcare professionals. If one has fondness for areas such as medicine, biology, chemistry, the medical field is an ideal career. Not only is medicine and surgery a lucrative career choice, but it also brings along a position of reverence in the society. And our industry expert for today's session is William MACIVER, Director, International Development and Strategies, American University of Caribbean, School of Medicine, United Kingdom. Welcome, Will. Please tell us about yourself and AUC.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for that wonderful introduction. I feel very, very honored to be here today, and thank you for inviting me on. And I just wanted to echo what you were saying there about the influence of doctors and medical healthcare professions during this time, during these COVID times, where they're absolutely use the word God. I've been using the phrase superheroes recently to describe the efforts of people who go into the medical profession, and I'm very, very jealous of them because of the accolades they're receiving at this time. But yes, a big shout out, big love and kisses to all those people out there who are involved in the medical professional. On a more serious note, of course, becoming a doctor is, something that is a desire, a dream, an ambition of so many students. And they generally believe that it is often a pathway that is filled with obstacles and pitfalls, and they fail to see the opportunity. And sometimes they end up doing programs that they otherwise didn't really want to do so, especially in India, where you have so many students and so few places. So at AUC, we're committed to try and help students break down the pitfalls and the obstacles and see a clear pathway towards what is possible. And in my job as the Director of International Development, my job is to bring home the idea to Indian students of what are the options, what are the opportunities, not just where will I be in 1 year's time, but where will I be in 6 or 7 years' time, 8 years' time, 9 years' time, because students want to see those clear pathways. And together with, friends like yourself, with whom we've been working at Missions World, we've been working on a very, very long-standing basis for many, many years. Plus, we have a dedicated office in major Indian cities, people placed in the right places in Indian cities, to be able to convey that message. And that's what we want to get across today, is that we obviously are committed to try and getting students into the healthcare profession. There are so many opportunities out there, and hopefully we'll make it easier for you. So just to conclude, my name is Will. I'm the Director of International Development, and we work very closely with our friends from Missions World, plus our team in India, who are there to help answer all your questions before or after this session, once we're done with it.
So the first question, that medicine, we call MD in UK. We don't call it MBBS. So that's what we call MBBS in India. So what's the difference between MBBS and MD? So if you could just tell about what exactly the difference is.
Sure. In short, an MBBS, which stands for Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery, is an ancient qualification, which is one that we're more familiar with in the Commonwealth countries, the UK, Ireland, Australia, India, not Canada, of course, because they follow more of an American types of qualification. But essentially, if you were to summarize it in one phrase, an MBBS is a qualification which is an undergraduate qualification. You can do that after school. So you finish your year 12 and then you go on to do an MBBS. And that's what you would do in India. Now, the pathway in America is slightly different. The US has a slightly different system to that. it's fair to say that an MD and an MBBS at the end are qualifications, and they are the equivalent of each other, although there is an argument to say that an MD is slightly more specialized. But it's just the route that you get from MBBS and to get to MD, they're completely different pathways. An MBBS is what you do basically at undergraduate level. It's an undergraduate degree which you do after school. You then go into an undergraduate medical degree, and depending on the country you go to, it's a 4.5 to 5.5 year degree. Sometimes in some cases 6, depending on your qualifications at the beginning. An MD degree is an American style qualification. Now that's a very different route altogether. In America, you finish school, you go and do a bachelor's degree, and then you major, to use the phrase, in one of the sciences: biotechnology, biochemistry, botany, chemistry, organic chemistry, one of those type of subjects. Or you do something called a pre-med program, which prepares you for medical school. Once you have your bachelor's degree, you then apply for an MD degree, which is another 4 years of postgraduate study, which is essentially medical school. And that's very, very competitive in the US. So basically, in short, an MBBS is undergraduate, MD is postgraduate. But the outcomes are very, very different depending on where you go to. Obviously, if you did an MBBS, you would have to do conversion examinations to get to practice in the United States. And what we are doing with our MD degree is you get to do an American style degree in a shorter time than what you would do if you were to do it in the United States, certainly after undergraduate level. And the outcomes are still pretty wide. For example, students who get our MD degree can live, work, and practice in the United States, live, work, and practice in Canada, Australia, the Gulf countries, a whole host of other countries, plus they can return to India because we're recognized by the MCI. But just lately, we also have accreditation for the UK, which is absolutely fantastic because it means that the students who are listening to this presentation can actually have a whole host of countries where they can use this MD qualification.
Wonderful. So if I just repeat what you said for my understanding, for my clarity,
Sure.
that MBBS degree is an undergraduate course, whereas MD is a postgraduate course. And it is a UK, so UK and India, they follow MBBS system, but in US, they follow MD. So first you have to do a graduation, a bachelor's in one of the minor subjects, and then science, it has to be science subjects, and then you get into the major, and that MD is a 4 years program.
Absolutely.
So okay. So, all right, I'm like right in the understanding of the difference between MD and MBBS.
However, we do have an opportunity for students who, once they finish their school, they can then go into what we call a 5.5 year MD degree. So in other words, we're rolling into one program, both the bachelor's degree and the postgraduate qualification. So in other words, they're doing in 5.5 years, and we do this in our campus in the UK, or they can do it in one of our Caribbean campuses. They do that in such a way that they do in 5.5 years what would normally take 8 years if they went to the USA.
So 3 years plus 4 years. So basically 7 years. If they want to do it in US, then it will take 7 to 8 years for them to become doctors.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, but if that the special program that we have in AUC, so they need to spend only 5.5 years.
Absolutely. And then they graduate with an MD qualification, which is recognized in multiple countries. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
The idea.
So, what are the prerequisites of getting into the medicine program of AUC?
Okay. If we're talking about the program, I'll begin with the 4-year medical degree program, which is hosted in the University of Central Lancashire in Preston in the north of England. You might be familiar with that city. Some people don't know it. It's a reasonable sized British city, but it's located very close to the major metropolitan centres of Liverpool and Manchester. And it's not too far from London, ideally, either. So the program we do there is a 4-year medical degree, which coincides nicely with the way that you would get into medicine in the United States. In other words, for those of our students who are in India, may have done an MBBS in Philippines, Russia, China, Ukraine. They've come back to India and they've thought, well, where's this degree going to get me? I can't really practice in any of the the high salary type countries like Australia, Canada, Europe, the United States, UK. And then they think about converting that MBBS into something. The other type of students we're looking for are those students who, when they were back in school, and it's a fact that 2 out of 5 Indian students dream of becoming doctors. You know, if they don't become doctors, they become engineers or they become computer scientists. But becoming a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, the professions is very, very highly dignified and sought after in India. But those students who want to become doctors, they do the NEET, as you said. They don't get into medicine because the places are very, very limited. They therefore then either go abroad, but many of them will choose to stay in India and go into something like pharmacy, vet science, dentistry. All very, very respectable professions, but not the dream or the ambition of those students who originally wanted to become doctors. So what we say to those students is, do you want to still become a doctor? And surprisingly, if you go around India, if you go into pharmacy colleges, dental colleges, most students do want to still become doctors, but they're not aware of the opportunity which we have together and presenting here, that you can actually get into a 4-year medical degree and convert that sort of, you know, previous qualification you have and use it as a suitable platform for converting into a proper bona fide medical degree. So that's the other category. The other category of student are those students who went into biochemistry, biotechnology, organic chemistry. In other words, they took the science route. They didn't go into medicine, they didn't go into the health profession. We're looking for those kind of students. So essentially there are 3 categories of students that we're looking for in India for our postgraduate qualification. Already MBBS type students, health professionals, or people who are studying at the moment on pharmacy degrees, already have a pharmacy degree, or those students who've gone down the science route. We're looking for those 3 categories. So if you are one of those students, you're our target audience. Obviously, in addition to that, the prerequisites require that you have some other details. For example, we're looking for all students to have previous experience in biology, chemistry. There's a whole list of different sort of criteria that we have. We'd be looking for
the major subjects. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Sort of, we call those prerequisites. We call them, you know, criteria. So they would have to have had biology, chemistry, calculus, a couple of other subjects. In addition to that, we'd expect them to have a good English level of 6.5 across all bands, the IELTS level or the equivalency. We'd expect them to have a very good sort of resume, sort of CV, and of course letters of reference would be required from those students, plus a personal statement of about 750 words. Essentially, it would be similar to applying for a university and the usual prerequisites that come with that, letter of recommendation, personal statements, etc., etc. But in addition to that, we are primarily looking at those 3 categories of students for our postgraduate qualification. And that ties in with how they would progress from if they were in the USA itself, they would progress from a bachelor's degree, majoring in science, and on to the medical school. So that's the way American students are used to doing it. Now, the other category of students we're looking for are those who are already in school. Now, there's a lot more of those students, obviously, in India. You know, how many students do you know in India who want to become doctors? You know, it's a huge number of people, but they know that the opportunities for them to get into medical school in India are quite limited. So they look elsewhere. And they tend to look at places where they obviously understand that getting into the UK is highly competitive. Getting into the USA is highly competitive. It's highly competitive even for native students in those countries. Yeah. So that's why they look for slightly easier options, or slightly more accessible options overseas, like Russia, China, Philippines, Ukraine. Nothing against the qualifications in those countries, but obviously if you were to ask most of those students, what would your dream be? Would it be to study in medical school in the USA or the UK, or would it be in Moldova or Georgia? I'm sure they would say USA, UK. So often those countries are seen as safety nets. We're offering the opportunity to go to the UK to study medicine, and following that, they've got a greater opportunity to get into very, very high paid work in very, very prestigious countries. To do that, we would be looking at students come onto our 5.5-year program following school from their year 12. We're looking at, if you want to translate it into A-level terms, British A-levels, we would only be requiring B at A-level, of which 2 of those subjects will be sciences, usually biology, usually chemistry, but they can be something else as well. And we have 1 other A-level as well. So what we're doing is we're offering a program which is a route into medicine. And let me just explain sort of why this is actually a very, very good route. The thing about medicine is you have to be absolutely brilliant at the point of application, which means that sort of you have to be an A grade student, super duper sort of A stars, you know, top marks in absolutely everything. And not everybody is like that. Students, we know, and certainly with doctors as well, they develop at different stages. You know, the difference between a student at 16 is very different from a student at 18, which is very different from a student at 20. It's very different from a student at 22. And the beauty of the MD program, it allows students to evolve and develop their skill sets and get their grades higher, improve their GPA. So by the time they're reaching the MD program proper, they're absolutely oven ready, as we would say. So we're looking for students not to be absolutely A grade type students, because even then they won't get into American medical school or UK medical school, but they can get into our program, which we run at UCLan, if they have the equivalent of 3Bs, which is the equivalent of 65% in CSBE in the Indian system. We put them in onto a program which lasts 2 years. It's a fast track accelerated pre-med type program that we do on the campus of the University of Central Lancashire. It's a very, very intense undergraduate qualification. It lasts 2 years. Remember, most science degrees in the UK last 3 years. And following those 2 years, you assimilate into our MD program in the UK, which is another 3.5 years, including the medical sciences curriculum and the clinical rotations. And then you graduate in total after 5.5 years. So that's an excellent pathway for your students. And what we'd be looking for, just to recap, is the equivalent of 3Bs at A level in the sciences, or if you want to translate that into Indian, 65% roughly speaking. And we can be fairly flexible on that within 3 to 5%, depending on the situation. That's on the understanding that the students evolve into medical students during that time. Because remember, they're only doing a science degree at this stage, but they're getting their bachelor's out of the way and then onto a program which opens up lots of doors for them in the future.
So you mean that for an MD program, we have got 3 kind of audiences who can apply for the MD program. One is the MBBS students who have done the MBBS from any of the other countries or maybe India, and they want to specialize into one of the faculties, so they get into MD program. Second is any health professional, any graduation program into science they have done, so they can also get into the MD program, which I understand that makes the student get a lateral entry into the program of that 5.5 years program. Am I right, Will?
Absolutely right, yes.
Okay, and the third is somebody after 12th. After the 12th in India, they can also first go to UK and start with their MD program straight away, where they'll first do a bachelor's and then get lateral entry into the MD program of 5.5 years overall, including the bachelor's.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In short, if you have a degree, you go into our graduate program, which lasts 4 years. If you don't have a degree, you go into our undergraduate MD program, which lasts 5.5 years. There we are.
For that, they need to have physics, chemistry, and bio as their main subjects. They need to have a minimum percentage of 50% in their 12th exams. They need to, for the admission process, they would require a personal statement, which will be very important to get the admission in the university. So I'm just repeating everything because, Will, we have an audience where they might have problem in understanding the accent. So I'm just trying to be very careful about that no one misses what you are conveying. And in that way, you also confirm that what I'm saying is right. And they also get it confirmed that, okay, this is what exactly they need to look at to get the admission for medicine in AUC.
Yeah, and any students who are interested on this call can contact you afterwards just to get verification on what we talked about as well, and we can send some materials out to them. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the admission procedure, Will? We will first talk about the students who have just completed their 12th exams and they are waiting for their NEET exam to be happened. So they are they are our major audiences for today's session, that they have cleared their 12th exams, they're waiting for the NEET to happen, and then they want to go for the medicine. So what would be the admission procedure? What is all that they need to start looking at immediately, simultaneously with the NEET preparations and the exam results?
Mhm. If they are undergraduate students, in other words, if they're still school leavers and they're interested in coming on an undergraduate program, we have only one intake a year, unfortunately. We may change that at some point in the future, but at the moment, they are looking at September 2021 entry for our undergraduate 5.5-year program, which is the 2-year pre-med program plus the 3.5 years leading on to graduation in MD. But that begins in September 2021. So those students should be targeting that date, unless they're already ready to go, in which case they can come in September 20. So we still have time. They still have the ability to, or the opportunity to study in September 2020 in our centre in Preston in Lancashire. We're still taking bookings for that. We're still taking applications. And because of the COVID situation, we're taking those applications up until a much later stage than what we would normally do. It's obviously something to bear in mind that when you're applying for medical school, the application procedure tends to be closed very, very, very early in the process. The USA is often a year in advance, or at least 6 to 9 months earlier. And we're quite flexible here because our program is an undergraduate degree, which is not actually part of the medical school. It's part of it is part of the medical school, but it is a science degree first and foremost, which we use as a platform onto the MD program. So the students can still apply up until the middle of August with that. So we're very, very happy, and even later. So we'll be happy to sort of consider those applications. So anybody who fits that criteria that we talked about earlier, Alicia, and is ready to come in September 2020, the door is still open. We are still taking applications. They need to get their transcripts together. They need to get their documentation together. They need to come in and see you. They need to, or talk to you over the phone. And if they want to, we can supplement that conversation with one of our staff in India to talk to them. So we'll be looking for the package of documents from them, as you would if you were making any application at this time. And we'll give that our close attention, and then they would be ready to arrive this year in the fall intake in University of Central Lancashire. So that's for the 5.5. So what would to summarize there, what I'm saying is we still are taking applications for the September 20 session, but obviously some of those students are thinking ahead, then it would be for September 21 for the undergraduate program.
So I have a question, Will. How about how important is NEET for any student who wants to get into the 5.5 years MD program? So how important is NEET for that student to clear? Is it compulsory for him to clear the NEET exam to get admission into the 5.5 years MD program?
That's a really, really good question. We recommend that all Indian students who are coming on our postgraduate qualification do NEET. And there's a particular reason for that. Now, to get into our undergraduate program, it's not obligatory to have NEET for our undergraduate program, although we understand that many students will already have NEET. In other words, they've attempted NEET, but they haven't been accepted into medical school and they're looking elsewhere. That is probably the main category of students that we're looking for the undergraduate program. So many of the students will have done NEET and not got into medical school, so they've got NEET anyway. It's not obligatory for entry onto the 5.5-year program, but then once you finish the 2-year bachelor degree, you would be required to do some external test in medicine, so usually MCAT or UCAT, or we have other options as well. But for Indian students, we recommend NEET before you can proceed onto the postgraduate element of that program. Now, NEET is very, very important because, as far as I understand, NEET is essential for Indian students if they ever want to come back to India. So it's a prerequisite. It's an absolute must for Indian students to have that when they come back. So if a student wants to come on the 5.5-year this program and already has NEET, great, we can accept them and we'll take that into account, although it's not obligatory. But at some point, if you don't have NEET, then you will have to do NEET in order to progress onto the postgraduate program that we do. So obviously at some point students are going to do NEET, so they have it now, great, but if they don't, they will be doing it later.
So the best part about it is that they don't have to wait for 1 year. They don't have to drop a year and wait for the next year to clear the NEET. If suppose one has not cleared the NEET this year, then they don't have to drop a year, right? So they can start with the undergraduate program and they can give the NEET next year. Or or the year after, because you would need NEET after the completion of the bachelor's and before entering into the MD program.
That's
So,
correct.
so I'll repeat for the audiences that in AUC, if you have not cleared the NEET exam in the present year, you can still start with the undergraduate program, which is the bachelor's degree. And after the completion of bachelor's degree and before you get the admission into the master's degree, MD program, you need to clear the NEET exam. And clearance of the NEET exam is important for any Indian student, because if he or she on a later stage decides to come back to India and practice medicine, so they would need the NEET clearance certificate for that. If they don't want to, then maybe okay, one question will, if one doesn't want to come back to India and do practice medicine in India, still that person needs to have NEET exam for MD program in AUC, or you can give the admission to a student who hasn't got the NEET exam and also doesn't wish to come back to India and practice medicine.
We are the students who are entering on our 4-year MD program at the moment are students who have to have some external qualification. So if in the United States, those students would do MCAT, which is obviously the main route for students to get into medical school in the USA. Outside the USA, those students are doing various external medical programs. So NEET is the recommended route for Indian students because of its accessibility, because of its commonality, because of its common knowledge. People know about it and they're very, very familiar with it. So that is the route that we're recommending. However, we have quite a lot of students from India at the moment who are doing alternative external examinations. For example, there is one called CASPER, which is more of an empathy, logic, collaborative types of test, which is very, very accessible. I don't like to use the word easy, but it's a very accessible type program and very, very popular with Indian students at the moment. So that's another opportunity that's available. Either way, I would suggest to students that if they can, then at some point when they can keep their options open. They can take, for example, the CASPER test if MCAT's not available or if NEET is difficult to do. They can do that in order to get into our 4-year medical program, MD program. But at some point, students, obviously, if they do come back to India in the future, yes, we are recognized by MCI, but they would be required to have an additional qualification in order to practice in India. We do say to students that, and obviously, keep your options open, because the opportunities we're giving you at the end are varied. There are multiple choice options for you. And whilst we do posit the program, we present it as a very powerful migration route to various places, including the UK now. Obviously, India is the 5th largest economy in the world now. For many Indian students, their future career might be at home rather than New Jersey or Florida or California or the north of England or London. So it's just all about keeping your options open, because the students are going to be global citizens, and it may be the case that in the future they do want to return to India and practice, perhaps set up a chain of private hospitals or something. So the world is changing so fast. And I think that if they can do NEET, obviously do NEET, but if they cannot do NEET, then we do have something called CASPER, which is available for them at this time.
Okay, all right. So it is advisable to go for NEET.
I think you should probably take the advice of our colleagues in India about that. What's the best option? We know that quite a lot of our students have been unable to take NEET at this time, so they've been choosing CASPER as a secondary option for them, and that's been very, very, very popular.
So, but how's the lifestyle of a doctor in UK? I mean, what are the wages, and like after the completion of their 5.5 years of MD program, so what is the next step after that?
Yeah, if we're talking about the UK, we are, of course, the program where they're going to be getting here is one that is an American style degree, but it is recognized by the GMC, which is the General Medical Council, which is the accreditation body that accredits all medical programs in the UK. So we are accredited by the GMC, which means our students, once they have graduated in the UK, have the ability to not necessarily go off to the USA, as our program did in the past, but they can remain in the UK and apply for what we call the PLAB test, which leads to something called Foundation Years 1 and 2. So let me just explain the process I'll explain through the program how it works, certainly the postgraduate element, and sort of what that leads on to. So our program is if you're talking about the 5.5-year program, we've got the first 2 years, which is basically the Bachelor of Medical Sciences, which leads on to the medical sciences curriculum plus clinical rotations. And following that, you graduate. Now, our students will basically do the 4-year MD degree, or in the case of the 5.5-year program, that element lasts 3.5 years, and then they graduate. They will have done some external examinations on the way, but they will have done something called USMLE, which is the United States version of those external tests. So normally there are 3 steps of USMLE in order to become a doctor to practice in the USA. But our students who graduate in the UK and want to pursue a career in the UK would only have to do 2 of those. They would do USMLE step 1 and 2, and they would have completed their clinical rotations, which is usually semesters 6 to 10, and they will have completed those in the UK at core teaching hospitals, of which we have 7 in the UK, and we have 17 in the USA. They also have options to go to do global electives in other countries. For example, they can go to Asia, they can go to Africa, they can go to Russia. They can do some time in other countries as well as part of their degree program. But they would complete their clinical rotations in the UK or the USA perhaps, and we would suggest if they want to pursue a career in the UK, they should do their clinical rotations in England. Following that, they graduate. Now, once they graduate, they have this, they've got their, they've graduated the students, they're having their selfies, they've got their family over, they're having their champagne, they're doing whatever needs to be done in order to celebrate becoming a student, but they're not licensed to practice. If they remain in the UK, they would then have to do something called PLAB, which is called PLAB test 1 and 2. There are 2 parts to that. So PLAB test 1 is the multiple choice question and answer session. And PLAB 2 is clinical, so that involves some clinical scenarios. I think there are 17, 18 different scenarios during which you're asked to describe what you would do in particular situations. Once you've passed that, then you are eligible for what we call GMC registration, means that you're eligible to be registered as a doctor in the UK. Doesn't mean you have your license, but then you would then go on to do what we call foundation years 1 and 2 in the UK. Now that's quite a confusing phrase, because foundation can be confused with students who are in the business of international education, understand that foundation is often something you have to do before you get onto a degree program. Forget that, it's something completely different. Foundation in medical means the bit that you do after PLAB, which would be the equivalent of what you would call being a junior doctor or a house doctor.
Or an internship. You start practicing as a learner.
Yeah, so it's like qualified to work, you're living, you're working, you're doing everything that needs to be done, you're working on the wards, and you're being paid for that. So you'd normally be paid anything around sort of 28 to 30,000 pounds per year, roughly speaking, when you're working as a house doctor in the UK. And once you've done foundation years 1 and 2, then you are qualified as a licensed doctor in the UK. So that is essentially the process for becoming a doctor in the UK. So our degree leads up to, so you would have to do USMLE step 1 and 2 in order to graduate, which is, obviously a very, very interesting program to do in itself. You graduate, PLAB 1 and 2, followed by foundation years 1 and 2. So it's 2 years after graduation that you would do. In terms of the lifestyle in the UK, if you do any sort of Google search and you look at the top 10 countries in the world for salaries for doctors, the UK is always in the number 6 or 7 normally, and the usual suspects are in there. Of course, it's always the USA, Canada, Australia, Belgium, Ireland, Switzerland. Those are all the countries which offer doctors very, very high paid salaries. So being a doctor is one of the most respected professions in the UK. The sky is the limit in terms of the opportunity for salaries that you can get. Most of our doctors work within the state system, which in many countries has, of course, a bit of a stigma when you're working in the state system. But the system we have here in the UK is a state system. It is what Americans would call a socialist medical system, but it means that it's free for everyone at the point of entry. So everything is covered by the National Health Service. The National Health Service is one of the biggest employers in the world, and our hospitals are very, very well run with highly skilled professional staff. And I have lots of family members who work in that system, and they love it. So your average doctor in Britain would earn something like $130,000 a year on average. It's also fair to say, and this is just people who are general practitioners, family medicine, that kind of thing. So roughly around $130,000 to $140,000 a year is the average. Still a lot less than what you would get in the United States, but it is still a very, very respectable salary to earn in the USA. And lots of those doctors will earn additional money by doing a lot of private work, which is quite acceptable within our system as well. So they kind of have a freelance role, if you like, as consultants, whereby they will supplement their income by doing private work as well. So it's
NHS, so you mean that a doctor who is already practicing in NHS can also have a private surgery?
Yes, they can also do their private work on the side. They can do it sort of as part of a private hospital. They can be sort of taken on as consultants in private hospitals. So yes, there are lots and lots of opportunities for doctors to earn additional money. Sometimes they will work at what we call locum tenens when they go into hospitals, and they'll not have a permanent position, but they will be like the equivalent of supply doctors, whereby they will get additional fees for, which are sometimes highly paid on a pro rata basis. So it is a very, very lucrative profession. It's a very respectable profession. Of course, it's a very stable profession as well, in terms of how you make your way in life. Of course, the big money in medicine in the UK is always when you get to consultant level, and then you lose your doctor title and you become a Mr., which is quite confusing to lots and lots of people. If you're not a doctor anymore, you become Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones. But in many respects, that's considered more respectable because you have climbed up the ladder of professional expertise and become a specialist in a particular area. And that's where there is, very, very, very high figures to be made for doctors. So it's very similar to the USA. I would just say that the starting salary in the UK is slightly lower than the USA, but the opportunities are slightly different, and the life experience is very, very different, and the lifestyle is very, very different. And the medical systems are very, very different. But one thing you can say about being a doctor in any of those advanced nations is that they are very highly paid, very lucrative, and very respected.
Great. So, Will, are there any scholarships for the international students?
Yes, we do have scholarships for international students. We have scholarships which are up to $55,000, which we can look into giving for any people who are interested in coming to our programs. And the reason why we give scholarships to medical students is because medical students tend to be a breed apart. They tend to be quite gifted people. And also the benefits of giving scholarships to students, obviously they benefit the student first of all, because it means that they are paying less for their career. Medicine can sometimes be considered quite expensive, although not as expensive as people think. But also the benefits of society are great. We do need more doctors. For example, England is really struggling with the number of doctors it has. That's been evident during the COVID crisis, where we've had to bring lots of doctors out of retirement and lots of nurses out of retirement in order to be filling the positions in the National Health Service. And the same is true in the USA, where by about 2040, by 2030, there is likely to be a shortage of about 140,000 doctors within the American healthcare system. So there is a need for doctors. So obviously we give scholarships. It's not guaranteed you're going to get the scholarship, but we do offer scholarships up to $55,000 as part of your program. We can sometimes give scholarships above that if the student is particularly brilliant, has particular criteria by which we need to measure them. They may have been top of their state in science or top of their state in chemistry or biology or something like that. They might come from a very strong, powerful medical background, and they may be strong very, very academically, in which case we have to look at additional funds for them. So the criteria for getting a scholarship is all made clear to students when they make the application. And that's all carefully explained by both yourself and our Delhi team as to how they go about that. But yes, we're looking at fairly generous scholarships in the region of about $55,000 $55,000 per scholarship. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I understand when I was, we were talking before the call that this ultimately leads you to a residency in USA as well, this MD program in AUC. So can you please explain a bit about how does this UK university gets you into residential program in USA?
Yeah. Getting into residency in the USA is basically as we would say in English, the bread and butter of our program. That's what we have been about in most of our career. So we were founded back in 1978, and we have seen 7,000 plus students from about 70, 80 countries going into residency, primarily in the USA and Canada. And most of those students would have been, of course, American students who fit the criteria of what is required of a medical student. In other words, they've tried to get into medical school in the USA, perhaps struggled or perhaps found it over competitive, didn't manage to get in, and then opted for a university like AUC in the Caribbean in order to get back into medical school, sort of to get into the American healthcare system. So those students would have done their 2 year of medical sciences in the Caribbean, and then they would have done their 2 years of clinical rotations in the USA, and they would have applied for residency. Now, obviously, our roots, our history is all in the Caribbean, on the island of St. Martin. And what we have done in our partnership with the University of Central Lancashire in England, in UK, is that we are now doing our American-style degree program on the campus of UCLan in Preston. So it means that our students don't have to go to the Caribbean. They can come to UCLan. They can come to the UK, which is very, very familiar. And I guess that many of the students on the call today have relatives living in the UK. Alicia, we were talking about your uncle earlier on. So we have very, very strong ties. So the UK is very, very popular for Indian students, as you can well imagine. And it's a very, obviously, given the language, given the history, it's a ready-made sort of location for them to pursue their careers. So we do our American style degree program, either 5.5 years or 4 years on the campus of UCLan in the UK. So you're studying an American style degree, and that you can do your clinical rotations if you want to go to the USA. You can do your clinical rotations in the UK, the USA, or both, or a mixture of both, or you can just go to the USA itself, where we have relationships with 17 teaching hospitals. So our students would do their clinical rotations in the USA, and during the course of their program, remember, they would have done the USMLE, which is the qualification. There's 3 steps as part of this qualification in order to become doctors in the USA. In order to graduate, they have to complete 2 of those steps, and then they go for a residency. Now, this is where we come in. Our job when it comes to students getting to the USA is to get them into residency in the USA, where we have a 90+% success rate of getting students into first-time residency match. Now, how it works is that at some point during your medical studies, you decide that you want to concentrate on family medicine or internal medicine or emergency medicine or pediatrics or obstetrics or gynecology or cardiology, radiology, you name it. So the student decides on which specialist route they want to go on. And we try and match students in the right state with the right hospital, with the right subject area. That's what we call a match. And our job is to help the students find the right match. And we do that by sort of, with a whole range of support mechanisms designed to make them get the right match. So let's say you're a student who wants to go and do, say, oncology in California. That is possible. We would try and match you up with a hospital that does oncology in California. You may have selected a particular hospital. You may have selected a particular sponsor to go with. You may have just selected the state. But we work very, very closely with you to make sure that we get that right and get you into the residency. And often it is based on, 2 things. One is the huge network of universities and hospitals that we have throughout the USA and Canada, but it's also in some respects down to the student and their ability to network. For example, on their clinical rotations, if they work very, very closely in a particular hospital, that hospital might be very, very keen to sponsor them for their residency once they've completed graduation. So it's a very, very exciting sort of, thing to try and find students for the right residency in the United States. Residency lasts anything from 3 to 7 years. During your time there, you are paid roughly in the region of about $50,000 to $60,000 per annum, which is perfect, absolutely. Very similar to the UK in that you're being paid for what you want to do, and you can start paying off your loans that you've accrued during the years. And at some point during your residency, usually before you've completed your residency, you will do what we call USMLE Step 3. And once you've completed this 3rd and final step to becoming a doctor in the USA, you're licensed. And that's the route that you take in the USA. So essentially, it's a 4-year MD program, or for our undergraduate students, a 5.5-year MD program, followed by anything from 3 to 5, 7 years of residency. Normally it's 3, 4 years, but sometimes 5. And then for some of the slightly more complicated specialities, it can take up to 7 years. So that's the route in the USA. Now, once you're in the USA, if you want to live, work, and practice there, then the salary levels are, of course, quite astounding. You know, the starting salary for American doctors is roughly around 170,000 US dollars. And you can get all this information on the internet, where it varies from site to site. But if you just were to go through a list of all the different specialities, you'll see that it's not uncommon to get salaries in the 300,000 mark, the $400,000 mark, the $500,000 mark, or even higher. But roughly speaking, the average salaries for doctors in the USA is anything between $250,000 to $290,000 a year. So a very, very good sort of pathway to take if you're interested in that kind of thing.
So generally, the first dream is to get into medicine, and the second dream is to clear the USMLE for most of the doctors. So I'll just repeat about the USMLE program. That AUC program is designed to clear the, your aim is to make the student clear the USMLE exam. So after doing the graduation plus 1.5 years of the MD program, you make the student sit for the USMLE 1. And then after the completion of the 5.5 years of MD program, you make the student sit for the USMLE 2. And according to your facts, 90% of your students have cleared the USMLE 1 and 2 in their first go. Am I right, Will? Please correct me.
Yes, it's over 90%. In fact, at the last count, it was in the region of, I think, just over 91% of our students cleared that in their first go, yes, and went into residency successfully first.
So after they have done their MD program, you help them get into the residency program in US, which is of like starting from 3 years to 5 years to 7 years, depending upon the speciality that they have enrolled for. And once they have done, once they are into the residency program, they also sit for USMLE 3. And
That's
after
correct.
USMLE 3 is done and the residential program is done, they are the licensed doctors to practice in USA. Am I right?
That's basically it. That is the route.
All right, so cool. So I can now, after you, you can call me in the next session and I can explain the process. Okay. So my next question is that when they decide to come back to India after USMLE, after US residency, after the MD program, do they still have to give that entrance exam in India to start practicing in India?
Well, we are recognized by MCI. I think that most students by this stage, it's not a problem that we've encountered before because most of our students would already have had NEET anyway. So I'll just have to double check on that. But if their NEET can't be more than 5 years old, as far as I understand, maybe my colleagues will be able to confirm that one with us. But because we are recognized by the MCI, it's not like you have gone and got your qualification in somewhere like the Philippines or somewhere. This is an MCI accredited program. In fact, that is one of our biggest points of contact when we're talking to Indian students, is that you do have that safety net of coming back to India eventually.
Okay. So I think we've got really good knowledge about the course. And before we get into the question answer round, we have one of our student who is your student now, Will. So I would like him to join. I'll add him to the Zoom session, and let's see if he can also share his experience for our viewers.
Excellent idea.
Hi, Dheer, are you there? Dheer, can you please turn on your video and audio? Oh, I think there's some problem on his side. Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So enough of English. अब हम थोड़ी देर हिंदी में बात करते हैं. So that हमारी audience को थोड़ा सा और अच्छे से समझ आए कि what is the experience of a student. अभी तक हम जो भी बात कर रहे थे, we were talking on the behalf of the university on the other side, but because you are one of the student who is studying in AUC, so धीर आपका experience कैसा था admission procedure को लेके? How easy or difficult it was for you to get admission into AUC?
ठीक है, तो I'll just start out. So मेरा नाम धीर है, मेरा अभी पहला साल खत्म होने आया है and I'll start second year in September. तो मेरा application process पिछले साल around यही टाइम पे हुआ था. तो फर्स्ट पहले एक ऑनलाइन फॉर्म था, वो भरना था and उसके बाद एक इंटरव्यू था and इंटरव्यू के बाद you either get accepted or rejected. तो मेरे पर्सपेक्टिव से एकदम ही सिंपल प्रोसेस था. कोई मुश्किल मेरे को नहीं लगा था. और एक बार इंटरव्यू के बाद अगर एक्सेप्टेंस मिल जाए तो AUC वाले सब डॉक्यूमेंट्स भेजते और उसके बाद वीज़ा के लिए अप्लाई करना था. तो वीज़ा एप्लीकेशन भी बहुत आसान था. डॉक्यूमेंट्स खाली ऑर्गेनाइज करना था, उसमें प्रीतिका ने भी बहुत हेल्प किया. तो एक बार डॉक्यूमेंट्स सब कलेक्ट करके सबमिट करना था और वीज़ा के लिए इंटरव्यू वगैरह कोई नहीं था. एक बार सिर्फ फिंगरप्रिंट्स के लिए जाना था और बस उसके बाद आई थिंक 1 या 2 हफ्ते में वीज़ा मिल गया. तो वीज़ा का प्रोसेस, एप्लीकेशन प्रोसेस एकदम सिंपल था, कोई ज़्यादा मुश्किल नहीं था. फिर अगला स्टेप था यहाँ प्रेस्टन में आना. तो मेरा फ्लाइट मैनचेस्टर में था, तो आई टुक अ फ्लाइट टू मैनचेस्टर और मैनचेस्टर से यहाँ प्रेस्टन मैं ट्रेन से आया और ट्रेन में अराउंड आधा घंटा है फ्रॉम मैनचेस्टर. और अगर आपको फ्लाइट लंदन लेना है तो आप लंदन भी ले सकते हो और लंदन से ट्रेन अराउंड 2-3 घंटे का है. फिर ट्रेन स्टेशन से यहाँ पे जहाँ मैं रह रहा हूँ वहाँ पे मतलब 10 मिनट का वॉकिंग डिस्टेंस है. तो बहुत पास में, कोई मुश्किल नहीं है. और मैं हाउसिंग का एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूँ. तो यहाँ मतलब अपार्टमेंट स्टाइल है. हर अपार्टमेंट में 4, 5 या 6 स्टूडेंट्स है. तो हर स्टूडेंट को अपना रूम और अपना बाथरूम मिलता है और खाली जो किचन है वो हम शेयर करते हैं सारे जो भी 4-5 स्टूडेंट है. और किचन में भी सब गैस है, फ्रिज, माइक्रोवेव, कॉफी मशीन हम सब प्रोवाइड करते हैं. खाली जो यूटेंसिल्स है कुकिंग के लिए, अगर आपको कुक करना है तो वो आपको खरीदना पड़ता है, बट वो भी हम सब ने एक साथ शेयर करके साथ में ही खरीदा. तो उसमें भी कोई तकलीफ नहीं आया था. तो रहने का भी एकदम सिंपल है. मेरे सारे रूममेट्स AUC स्टूडेंट्स हैं, तो हम सब क्लास में भी साथ में जाते हैं, साथ में वापस आते हैं, साथ में पढ़ते हैं. तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं आया कि ऐसा नहीं लगा कि मैं यहाँ अकेला हूँ या कुछ. Sorry, go ahead.
Wonderful. Dean, how difficult or easy it was to get into the new environment and especially a new accent? I mean, when you started studying and in your initial classes, I'm sure we are not usual to this kind of an English. So how easy or difficult it was for you to understand in the initial classes, or how long did it take to get adapted to that accent?
So मतलब ज्यादा मुश्किल नहीं था क्योंकि जो थोड़े प्रोफेसर्स है वो इंडियन भी है.
Oh, wow.
तो प्रॉब्लम नहीं आया. एक्सेंट थोड़ा है बट 1-2 महीने लगता है, बट देन सब एकदम ही सिंपल लगता है क्योंकि ज्यादा डिफरेंस नहीं है. बट 1-2 महीने में एडजस्ट हो जाते हैं एंड देन everything is good.
And how about the new cold country? I mean, getting from a hot country to a cold country. उसमें कहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम आई? और आई
Sure. तो यहाँ मतलब ठंडी है बट इतना मतलब इन द विंटर्स ऐसे 0, -1, -2 तक जाता है. बट अंदर कमरे में या फिर क्लासरूम में वगैरह हीटर्स है, तो जब आप अंदर होते हो तब आपको नहीं लगता. और बाहर जाना हो तो अगर आप जैकेट पहन लो या थोड़ा एक विंटर कोट यहाँ पे खरीद के अगर वो पहन लो तो भी ठीक ही है, मतलब ज्यादा ठंडी नहीं होता, और अंदर हीटर्स होते हैं तो आपको अंदर ज्यादा ठंडी और गर्मी नहीं लगता, और समर्स भी यहाँ पे ज्यादा गर्म नहीं है, मतलब अभी भी 15-20 डिग्री मैक्सिमम है समर में। तो एसी की भी जरूरत नहीं है, सिर्फ अगर हीटर है जो हर कमरे में, क्लासरूम में, सब जगह हीटर्स है, तो आपको कोई तकलीफ नहीं आता वेदर के हिसाब से। और एडजस्टमेंट भी बहुत आसान था, क्योंकि जो बाकी स्टूडेंट्स भी है वो भी आपके आपके शूज में ही है, मतलब वो उनके लिए भी वो पहला एक्सपीरियंस है। तो हम सब मतलब एक दूसरे को सपोर्ट करते हैं कि ओ अगर इसको कुछ अच्छा नहीं लग रहा या कुछ, तो हम सब साथ में होते हैं कि अच्छा नहीं, हम सब एक साथ है, और हम एक दूसरे को देख के भी ऐसा स्ट्रेंथ आता है कि नहीं, अगर दूसरा कर सकता है तो मैं भी कर सकता हूँ। वैसे तो वो हम एक दूसरे को सपोर्ट करके अपना कॉन्फिडेंस भी बढ़ाते हैं।
Wonderful. Okay, Deep, my last question. How does the day goes? मतलब कैसे क्लासेस होती हैं, कैसे आपकी प्रैक्टिकल क्लासेस होती हैं, सो पूरा दिन कैसे जाता है आपका?
श्योर तो मतलब हमारे जो भी क्लासेस होते हैं वो यूजुअली मॉर्निंग में होते हैं, तो अराउंड 9 to 12 या 1 o'clock तक होते हैं। तो सुबह मैं 7, 7:30 को उठता हूँ, थोड़ा सीरियल, ब्रेकफास्ट, दूध वगैरह जो भी ब्रेकफास्ट के लिए चाहिए वो तैयार करके क्लास के लिए निकल जाता हूँ। क्लास भी वॉकिंग डिस्टेंस है, 10 मिनट से कम लगता है क्लास में जाने के लिए। तो 9 से 12:30 1 तक क्लास होता है। फिर लंच भी अगर मैं कभी कभी पैक करके लेके जाता हूँ, नहीं तो क्लास के बाजू में ही कैफेटेरिया है जहाँ गरम खाना वो लोग रोज सर्व करते हैं। वेजिटेरियन ऑप्शंस भी होते हैं, मैं प्योर वेजिटेरियन हूँ और मेरे को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं आया खाने का। तो वहाँ वो लोग सर्व करते हैं और रिलेटिवली चीप, 4-5 पाउंड में आपको लंच मिल जाता है। और आफ्टरनून्स में लैब होते हैं, तो वो 2 से 3 या 4 बजे तक लैब होते हैं। उसके बाद हम सब यूजुअली लाइब्रेरी में जाते हैं, तो 4 से 7-8 बजे तक हम लोग लाइब्रेरी में पढ़ते हैं। और उसके बाद घर पे आते हैं, तो या तो घर पे खाना बनाते हैं या तो फिर अगेन बाहर खाना खा लेते हैं, और सो जाते फिर 10 बजे, एंड देन अगेन वापस अगले दिन 7 बजे चालू होता है।
Wonderful sharing, wonderful sharing. He, thank you so much. Thank you for taking out the time to come and share your experience. Because as a student, when you share your experience, the other students can relate. Because there are a lot of fears. अगर हम as an Indian student compare करें अपने आप को और countries के students से, so we come out of a very protective environment, and all of a sudden we are in open. From
Correct.
inside the eggshell, you are outside the egg. So it's a totally different life, and the parents have their level of fears and students have their side of the story. So when it comes from a student itself, it becomes easy for them to relate and understand that how the life would be, what all would be done apart from the studies, what all challenges would be there, and how easy and motivating it would be to get into a new country, new culture, and then develop yourself as a new person. And the things you learn from a new culture is amazing part of studying overseas, which I always say to all my students, that apart from what you study is you become a new person. You get to know the other side of the world, and the new things that you learn, the way of living changes completely.
एग्जैक्टली नहीं मतलब आई नो लाइक पेरेंट्स भी मतलब प्रोटेक्टिव होते हैं, बट इवन एज अ स्टूडेंट लाइक अकेले रहने यू ग्रो एज अ पर्सन टू। लाइक पहले 2-3 महीने हाँ ऐसा लगता है कि पेरेंट्स को मिस कर रहे हैं या कुछ, बट अभी टेक्नोलॉजी भी इतना अच्छा है कि मैं अभी रोज वीडियो कॉल करता हूँ अपने पेरेंट्स को, तो आई कैन टॉक। बट अकेले रहने में भी अपना मतलब लर्निंग बहुत होता है, क्योंकि घर पे आपको सब मिलता है कि हाँ ये है, ये प्रोटेक्शन है, बट एक बार आप बाहर आओ तो इवन यू बिकम मोर मैच्योर कि नहीं, मेरे को ये सब अब खुद करना पड़ेगा, मेरे को खाना खुद बनाना पड़ेगा, या मेरे को खाना खुद लेने।
Become self-dependent. You're not
Yeah,
dependent
you
on
become,
others.
exactly. So you can now take responsibility yourself, and so that even makes you a more mature person. तो अगर बाद में भी अगर if you go back to India या कुछ ऐसा, तो you're a different person. You get to learn so many new things that you would never learn if you were in India. So that that is one of the best experiences of living alone in a different country.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So definitely we'll connect after the call, and you can exit the call and we'll go back to Will and we'll take the questions from the audiences now.
Definitely. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Will. So we are getting a lot of questions. So let's start with the question answer round. Or is there anything else that you want to share before I start with the question answer round?
No, let's get straight into the questions. I'm all yours. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so the first question is that how many Indian students does AUC have?
It's an interesting question. I would say that any time, probably, if you're looking at sort of the combined campuses, we would probably have in the region of about, I would say about 10% of our students will be from the South Asian region. Many of those students, of course, are students who've gone to the USA and done biochemistry or something like that, and then qualified to go on to MD school on our campus in St. Martin. So, and of course, medicine is a very, very popular profession for Indian students. So that's quite a reasonable number, I would say.
Wonderful. So the next question is that why the degree is 2 years and not 3 years? So I assume that she's asking about the graduation, the bachelor's degree, that why it is a 2 years degree but not a 3 years degree.
Yeah, it's a very good question because yes, normally degrees are 3 years in duration minimum in the UK. This is let's say, a special type of degree. It's like a fast track accelerated pre-med program that we do in order to give people the bachelor to use to move on to the graduate program. So yes, in normal circumstances, a degree would be 3 years. But after 2 years here, remember, you would actually get a qualification in your hand. So you would have a separate piece of paper saying you have a bachelor in medical sciences. So in itself, it is a degree. It's just an accelerated degree.
So after, okay, one question apart from this question, this is my question, Will, that
Yep.
after 2 years, if I do not, you say that this is a fast program that, you know, the fast accelerated program. So after 2 years of graduation, I change my mind and I don't feel like continuing in the MD program. So what do I do in that case? Do I still get the 2 years graduation certificate, or I then will have to do 1 extra year of bachelor's degree?
Now you would get the certificate in your hand. I would think that most students who come on this program are coming with the intention of getting through to complete the whole 5.5 years and get the MD degree. But if they don't, I mean, obviously after 2 years, if they choose their mind or change their mind, or they don't make grade for whatever reason, then they're free to go into something else. They can then go into pharmacy, they can go into nursing, they can go into a whole range of other options in the sciences.
So the next question from Kajal is that can we practice in UK after MD program as well? We will complete BSc from UCLan.
Yeah, if you complete our 5.5-year program or even our 4-year MD program in the UK, at the end of this, you would get an American-style degree issued by ourselves, AUC. And so long as you then go on to follow the path, the criteria set by the GMC, which is to do PLAB 1 and 2 followed by foundation, then absolutely you're then going to be licensed. As long as you do everything correctly, you're going to be licensed to live, work and practice as a doctor in the UK eventually.
And also they have to give the entrance exam, that is PLAB, to practice.
Yes, they have to do, yes, they would have to do PLAB after their degree. So they would be completing their degree with us. And then obviously in many circumstances, our students will be going off to the USA to do residency. But our students who've completed graduation.
So she wants to know about UK. So for UK, yep, she needs to do the MD degree. Then after that, she needs to clear the PLAB, two exams of PLAB. And then after that, she needs to do the 2 years of foundation course. And then she is able to work as a licensed doctor in UK. Am I right?
That's the basic route. Yes, you do PLAB 1 and 2, then you get GMCA registration, and then you do foundation years 1 and 2, and you're a house doctor, and then you're qualified. Yeah.
The next question is that what are the chances of getting postgraduate seat in UK after clearing PLAB?
Fairly good. As I said before on the call, we have a huge shortage of doctors over here. So there is a demand for overseas doctors. So for any doctor who comes outside the EU, or what we call the European Economic Area, which includes countries like Norway and Switzerland, they have to do PLAB anyway. So any doctor from outside that region, and the reason why our students do this is because our degree is actually an American qualification, but it is eligible to do PLAB. So therefore our students are okay to do that. So you're studying in the UK, but it's not actually a UK degree. It's an American style degree, but it does make you eligible to do PLAB. And thereafter, obviously, it depends very much on how you perform and whether you're going to get the position in a hospital at the end of that. But it is a very, very popular route. And the reason why is because we have a shortage of doctors.
The next question is from Pranali, and she says, what if someone fails in the USMLE step 1?
They are allowed to do it again. Failing USMLE step 1 is something that we take very, very seriously. I mean, obviously, we have a very, very high percentage pass rate for that. So 96% of our students pass USMLE step 1 first time.
Wonderful.
So you are allowed to do this. So it is a very, very, very high pass mark. You have to understand that our whole program is designed to get students through USMLE. Those are the steps that you have to go. Those are the obstacles you have to climb over to become a doctor. So our whole program is designed to get you through those steps. So we put all our efforts into that to make sure that we have a very, very high step rate, pass rate. But failing that, you are allowed to do it again. Yes.
Okay. So the next question is again from Pranali. She says that her cousin is pursuing BSc program from abroad. It's a 4 years program and she is in 3rd year currently. Any possibility of she can join 4 years program without completing BSc?
I would suggest in her case that she completes the science degree, because you have to have a bachelor's in order to go on to the postgraduate qualifications. That is the ultimate prerequisite. I would say that sort of, obviously that there is no reason for her to come and do our 2-year BSc because she's only got 1 year left. So I would suggest that she completes that and then uses that and then applies, and we'll happily look at that.
So after she has completed her graduation, Pranali, she can go for another 4 years MD program in AUC.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the next question is from Himanshu, and he says, why NEET is not important? What if I want to come back to India? Himanshu, we never said that NEET is not important. We have been saying this in the whole discussion that NEET is advisable for everybody. They should definitely go for NEET. Yes, if you have not cleared NEET, and if you are in the 12th class, you have given your 12th class exams, and you have not cleared the NEET, you can still go and start with your graduation, your bachelor's degree. And in the meantime, when you are all set to get into the MD program, you have to go for the NEET exam. So we have never said this, that NEET is not important. NEET is definitely important because you never know when the day comes that you decide to come back to India and practice medicine in India. Am I right, Will?
That's right, yes.
Okay.
Or you can do another alternative external medical examination, but it's highly recommended for Indian students, just so they have that safety net, because the world is changing and India is growing.
Yes. So what degree do we get from UK? Shobha has this question.
Mm-hmm. So you'd actually get 3 qualifications. If you do the 5.5 year program, you're first of all going to get the Bachelor of Sciences. So it's called the Bachelor of Medical Sciences. So that would be your first piece of paper in your hand. You then get something after another 1.5 years called the Postgraduate Diploma of International Medical Sciences. You would obviously be doing USMLE steps 1 and 2 during that time as well. And then when you finally pass your qualification, when you graduate, you would be getting an MD degree issued by the AUC, which then you use as a platform to wherever you want to take it, in the UK, USA, or beyond.
So this is the same question again, that why degree is 2 years and not 3 years. Shobha, we have already answered this. This is a fast accelerated program. So after 2 years, you get the lateral entry directly into the MD program. So that is why this program has been, this bachelor's degree has been specially designed for the fast accelerated MD program of AUC.
Absolutely.
So the next question is from Eknoor. What are eligibility criteria for taking admission, as I missed the starting part of the session? Okay, so we'll repeat it quickly for you. You can, it is going to stay, the video is going to stay on the page, Eknoor. You can always go back and listen to all the details. So Will, if you can just quickly repeat the eligibility criteria.
Okay, roughly speaking, if it's for a 5.5 program, we would be looking for a school leaver who doesn't have an undergraduate degree, and we'd be looking for the equivalent of 3 Bs at A level, of which 2 of those have to be sciences. So there are variations on that, but roughly speaking, we're looking at 65% for students in the Indian system, but we can obviously be flexible there. So that's roughly what we're looking at. If it's a 4-year MD degree, we're looking for students who've got an MBBS background, or we're looking at students who've got a health background in pharmacy, vet science, nursing, one of those type of areas, or we're looking at students who've already got a bachelor's degree in one of the sciences or one of the accepted sciences like biotechnology, biochemistry, and so on.
Okay.
It's quite a large grouping of people, yeah.
So another question is from Kajal. She says, do we get any other degree from UCLan apart from BSc?
Well, I think that three pieces of paper in your hand is absolutely fantastic. You would be getting 2 things from UCLan. One would be the Bachelor of Medical Sciences, and the second one would be the Postgraduate Diploma of International Medical Sciences, and then the 3rd degree would be the one issued by AUC. I think the important thing to bear in mind is, what does that get you? Where does that take you? Okay, you're going to have by this time 2 pieces of paper issued by a British university and the other one issued by an American style university. It's the opportunities and the doors that opens for you at the end, whether you want to go into studying, living and practicing in the USA or in the UK. It opens the doors for all of those places. It's accredited by all the right bodies internationally.
So so she has another question, Will. She says that he mentioned about the student who came. He mentioned about the visa assistance. So what kind of visa we will be going to UK on, and what about the visa for clinical rotations and residencies?
A very good question. The process that you would get would be the Tier 4 visa system for UCLan, which is very, very familiar for any of the students who want to go to the UK. So that's what you would need, whether you went on an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program. And that's actually issued by the University of Central Lancashire. Now, for our students who go off to do their clinical rotations in the USA, and surprisingly, they only need a B1 tourist visa to go to do their clinical rotations in the USA. And in terms of the visa assistance, absolutely, that would be given by you, our colleagues and professional friends from Admissions World, and also by our Delhi team. So we have a team of people who are there at any time to answer any of these questions and provide you with the right kind of visa assistance. And obviously, here is one of many examples of students who've gone successfully and had the right kind of advice from our people. So visa support is absolutely there. It's absolutely guaranteed.
Okay. So I hope, Kajal, you have the answer. The next question is from Shobha Bansal. She says that she has already asked the question earlier, and she's saying thank you for answering her question. And she wants to know, she's actually asking the question for her daughter. She says that I want to send her to UK after PLAB. What is the process to practice as a doctor in UK?
He wants to send her to the UK after PLAB. Would she be studying with us first? So if she's studying with us, then she would complete USMLE Step 2, would graduate, and then she would be eligible to do PLAB. And then she would, without the additional assessment, she would do PLABs 1 and 2, followed by GMC registration, which would get, if you successfully pass, followed by obviously foundation year 1 and 2. So that's the situation. Now, if the student has an MBBS from another country and they want to make an application for PLAB themselves, they can find all that information on the GMC website about how to do that without going to do a course of study. So that's something that she can obviously sort of research. But it would be the same system. It would be that the student would require an individual assessment, which may not necessarily be granted. So in other words, it may come from a medical school which has not been recognized by the GMC. It might be in Russia, it might be in China, And obviously, medicine in one country is very different from medicine in another country. So a tried and tested route is to use our services and come on our program, because that leads automatically into PLAB. So provided you graduate, of course.
So Shobhaji, the important point that you need to look at is that what university she is doing her undergraduate medicine course from, because to even apply for PLAB, you first need to see whether the university from where she has done her medicine comes under the approved university list or not. Only then she will be able to apply for PLAB, and after that she has to do her foundation course for 2 years, and then after that she's ready to practice as a doctor in UK. Am I right, Will?
That's roughly it, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next question, the most interesting question has finally come. So Altif wants to know about the fee structure.
Very good question. The fees for our program are, roughly speaking, if you're talking about the 4-year program, that's about $254,000 all total. So that would be obviously 4 years of study. You pay by semester, so you don't have to pay the whole lot up front. We obviously give, if you're eligible for the $55,000 scholarship for all our international students, then that brings the fees down to just below $200,000 at $199,000. So $199,000 would be the fees for the 4-year program. If you're talking about the 5.5-year program, if you were to look at the cost of that, it's roughly about $264,000. And with the $55,000 scholarship, that would bring the total course fees over the 5.5 years down to, roughly speaking, around the $209,000 mark. So those are quite generous scholarships that we offer to make it more accessible for students to come on the programs. And if you were to look at the cost of medical school in the USA, then the fees for that program are much cheaper than what you would be paying if you were to go to medical school directly in the USA, and usually in most cases much cheaper than what you would be paying in the UK as well, with no guarantee of getting in there. So they are accessible programs with fairly sort of competitive and reasonable fee structure. I think the thing to bear in mind is, of course, that, for example, if you were to go and complete USMLE Step 2, complete your clinical rotations and go on residency in the USA, as soon as you hit residency, you're being paid in the region of about $50,000 a year. So you begin to pay back almost immediately what you've accrued. And the reason why people want to go to medicine is because, yes, the upfront fees are more expensive, but the rewards over the course of a lifetime are very, very, very high. And that's going to be, with a UK style degree or with an American style degree, I think your earning potential over the course of a lifetime is going to be a lot more than if it was with, say, a Chinese university, for an example. Hope you got all that.
All right. So, and there's another question from Arsh Chopra. He wants to know the criteria for admissions in AUC. Arsh, we have already told the criteria a couple of times. I'll just quickly repeat it for you. That I don't know in which class you are, whether you are a graduate or you are a school student. If you have completed your 12th, you need to have PCB, physics, chemistry, biology as your subjects, and minimum percentage should be 50%. And you're all set. And of course, NEET. NEET is important. If you have not given the NEET exam, or if by any chance you have not cleared the NEET exam, then you can still get into the bachelor's degree program. And in the meantime, you can clear your NEET exam. Have I not covered any point, miss, or everything is there, Will?
That's okay. And obviously we can deal with any individual questions afterwards. If the students want to write to you personally or to our Delhi team, that would be fine.
Okay. Another question. Okay, one more question. If I want to stay back in UK after MD, are there any entrance exam or requirements?
Yeah, I think we covered that one about the PLAB and foundation years. Mm-hmm.
So yes, you need to give PLAB. There are 2 exams of PLAB, and after that foundation years, and then you get the license to practice in UK. Another question, Will, that what if someone fails the GMC?
If they fail PLAB?
I guess
Yeah, if you fail PLAB, as far as I understand, you're allowed to take PLAB up to 4 times, I believe.
Okay.
And I think you're allowed a fifth time as well, sort of based on special circumstances. But I'll confirm that one to you. But yes, the PLAB test can be taken on multiple occasions. Yes.
So another interesting question I have for you is that what is the best college according to you in United Kingdom for medicine, I assume?
Well, that's a very, very hard one. The answer I always give to that when people say, what is the best university for something in the UK? The answer I always give is that we actually don't have any bad universities in the UK as such, and they all offer something pretty special. You know, if you were to look at top medical schools in the UK, they would be very, very difficult for Indian students to get into if they were to apply directly. You know, if you're looking at, say, Liverpool or Swansea, Cardiff, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Birmingham, Bristol, they're going to be very, very difficult to get into. And the entry rate for British students is highly competitive as well. And you can get students who have, say, 3 A's at A level and don't get into medical school in the UK. And that's the same in the USA, where on average, a student gets something like 70% rejections from universities. What I can say about UCLan, the University of Central Lancashire, it is probably the most international focused medical program or medical school in the UK. It's a very, very modern university in the sense that although the actual university has existed from the beginning of the 19th century, but in its modern form, it only became a university in 1992. Now, with that comes huge investment in the facilities. So the facilities we have at UCLan are absolutely out of this world. When we're talking space age type technology, and it is a very, very flexible university when it comes to accepting international students. So yes, the entry criteria are still quite high. If you were to try and apply for an MBBS there, that would be considered as difficult to get into as most other British universities. But what we have is something whereby we're giving an alternative route for students. So if they're not absolutely tip-top ready for an MBBS, they are still okay to become medical students, but we just expect them to develop at a slightly different pace. And that's the beauty of the program we're offering in UCLan. So UCLan is a great university, absolutely. Of course, if you were to look at the top universities in the world, it's not Oxford, it's not Cambridge, it's not Harvard or Stanford, but there's no such thing as a bad university in Britain, I don't think. And I'm not just saying that because I'm British.
One more question they have. What is the success rate of students at AUC for PLAB exam?
Okay, well, that's an interesting question because it's only recently that we got GMC accreditation, and that only came earlier on this year. So because we are now an organization which has a UK campus or a UK track program, we are doing, we applied for a GMC accreditation, which means it's eligible for our students to do PLAB. Now, to date, we haven't had any students do PLAB yet in the UK. What I can say, though, about is USMLE, where the equivalent, obviously, is to get students into residency in the USA, and we have a 91% pass rate of getting students into residency. So if I put that into statistic for you, roughly speaking, each year we get anything in the region of about 360 students graduating, going into 18 different specialities across 45 different states in the USA. So that's our record up to now with the USA. With PLAB, it remains to be seen because we only began the programs last year, and our first cohort is not going to be for another 3 years. So people like Deer is only going into his second year. So he's another 2 years before he decides, does he want to go to the USA, want to go to Canada, want to go to Australia, does he want to come back to India, or does he want to remain in the UK? So he'll be one of our first students going to do PLAB, but I would expect that the success rate would be based on the statistics that we've had in the USA, which is 90+%, which is very, very, very high.
Wonderful. So that's it. That's all questions that we have got, Will, and we have really had a great, insightful session with you. And because this is my 5th episode, and this episode has got the maximum number of questions if I compare it with the other 4 sessions that we have. So I hope for the audiences, we have cleared almost all the doubts and whatever questions they had in their mind. And the message is for audiences that we will add on the WhatsApp number in the description of the live video that is going to stay on the page forever. So ever you have any query, you can feel free to send the inquiry to us on the WhatsApp number. You can feel free to call us, and you can also send us an email. We'll share all our contact details in the description of the video. And thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much for sparing your time and letting us have the insight into the AUC and and this is something really amazing. See, and I have been working in the field of MBBS for a long time. We have been sending students abroad, and AUC is the only university that I've come across who aims at USMLE. And when I said earlier when we were talking that one aim for a student is to become a doctor, and once he becomes it, when he starts his journey as a doctor, his dream changes into clearing the USMLE.
That's right.
So USMLE is the second dream of a doctor. One is to become a doctor, and second is to clear the USMLE. And AUC aims only and only at ensuring that you clear the USMLE exam and you start your residency in USA. So they are not just making you doctors, but they are also making you ready for USMLE, and you can start your residency in US. So thank you, Will. Is there anything that you would want to share before we wind up the session?
I'd just like to say thank you to you, Alicia. Thank you to our colleagues from Alencar and Pritzker, and big thank you to Dia for joining us, and a big thank you especially to all the students who joined us today. You're doing a marvelous job. If you become doctors, you'll do an even more marvelous job. Okay. Hope life takes care of you professionally and personally, and stay well in these times. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Alicia. Bye-bye.